today.
The Inner Voice Show is a dialogue between the host and the listeners about their relationships. This show is not an attempt to assess, diagnose, or treat any mental health or illness condition. Please consult your physician, psychiatrist, or psychotherapist for personal matters.
Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inner Voice Show. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine and have Sean in the studio. This is a show about what matters most in our life, our thoughts, our feelings, actions, relationships, and our fulfillment in this beautiful journey of life. So in this show, I'll bring you the latest research regarding increasing sleep time after trauma could minimize the psychological effect. Then I'll bring you Roni Maislish, who's a psychotherapist working in the field of emotional eating and the emotional aspect of obesity. And then I will talk to Lyn Lesch. He's an educator. He founded and directed his own democratically run school for children ages 6 to 14. 6 to 14, yeah, actually, for 12 years. Which really received a widespread attention in the Chicago area. And he is the author of Intelligence in the Digital Age, How the Search for Something Larger May Be Imperiled. For both of the guests, I really have enjoyed our conversation. I love to hear from you, so connect with me through my website, foojan.com, and follow my social media and message me with your comments and topics of interest. But first, here's the tip of the week. Past week, I traveled to Carmel, California, and Monterey in Northern California for a couple of days just to see family. We drove. I began conversing with people who were around us, from restaurant owners to people who were at the hotel, different family members and friends. I realized how much we surround ourselves with people who have the same ideology, same thought process, and habit. This may give us the illusion that the world thinks just like us, or that our thought patterns, ideas, and behaviors are accurate and the way of the land, and even get surprised that others out there have different ideas and see things very differently. I also realized how we make others wrong, not different, but wrong, when they don't believe in what we believe in. We see this a lot recently, right? We actually had an interesting conversation about the new normal with the resentments toward all the changes that have happened and each person's personal responsibility toward their own life and the life of others. What I noticed was that the amount of information that is out there and roaming around social media, which attaches part science, part reality, and then leaps forward misinformation and conspiracy theories that are creating a misconstrue of reality. The fascinating part of our conversations were about knowing exactly what the science and scientists have offered, but dismissing the actual scientific guidelines and suggestions because we just don't feel like it, or that it was an inconvenience. So I was also witnessing how some just add a couple of sentences about brain sciences or quantum physics at the beginning of the sentences, and then bridge the conversation to completely unscientific ideas, and then claim it to be a scientific proof to the point that is pretty much not reality-based. And I have witnessed friends and families get into fights, threaten not to talk to each other due to all of these misinformation. Marriages are breaking up. Communities are mistrusting each other. Children and teens are getting confused about what to trust and believe or role model. How is this beneficial to any of us? I don't know. I really don't see any benefit. This made me think and kind of created more questions for me. So here they are. I'm throwing you the questions for you to answer for yourself. Where do you get your source of information? Do you fact check? Where do you fact check? Are you interested in what science and research actually has to offer and has brought to our attention? Do you trust scientific research? Do you trust your own experience? Are you interested in other people's opinions? How much do you actually listen and receive other people's ideas? Do you dismiss other people's opinions when it's not similar to yours? Like, they're stupid, they don't understand, forget it. What I notice is that we all live together on this earth and affect each other's lives with our opinions, actions, votes, decisions. It's important to hear each other, be curious, and be motivated to learn from each other. If we actually open our hearts in listening to each other and share our own views and ideas with the utmost respect to all, then the open, heartfelt dialogue would teach us all how to look at things from a different perspective. It might even allow us to clarify some of the misinformation that is feeding fear and division among us. Hating each other comes only from not knowing each other. When we are willing to come forward with the spirit of cooperation and not division, we can find ways that work for all of us. I love to get to know you and what your needs are. So let me know. I certainly love to connect with you. We will be right back with the latest research.
Join the conversation every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific for Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Dr. Foojan is a radio and TV host, international speaker, psychotherapist, life coach, and the author of Life Reset, The Awareness Path to Create the Life You Want. She brings you the latest research and interviews with experts in the field of cognitive sciences. Anyone who loves to grow and create growth for humanity gets a voice on this call-in show. Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Monday afternoons at 3 p.m. Pacific on Smart Talk KMET 1490 AM and on KMET1490am.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the latest research. Increasing the amount of time spent sleep immediately after a traumatic experience may ease any negative consequences. This suggests a new study conducted by the researchers at Washington State University's LCNS Floyd College of Medicine. This was published in Scientific Reports. The study helps build a case for the use of sleep therapeutics following trauma exposure. Basically, the study has found that if you can improve sleep, you can improve function. The finding holds particular promise for populations that are routinely exposed to trauma, such as military personnel, first responders, and may also benefit victims of accidents and natural disasters or violence and abuse. People with PTSD oftentimes experience nightmares and other types of sleep disturbances, such as frequent awakenings and insomnia. One thought was that those sleep disturbances may cause further cognitive impairment and worsen the effects of PTSD or the initial trauma. So the research intended to see whether repairing the sleep disturbances associated with trauma exposure could actually help alleviate the symptoms of PTSD. This research also highlights that there is a time-sensitive window when if you intervene to improve sleep, you could potentially stave off the negative effects of trauma. It seems like if you are kept awake after a trauma, this could potentially be harmful to your cognitive function, although they haven't directly tested this part of the study. As an example, victims of traffic accidents who may not get much opportunity to sleep as they're poked, potted, and examined and treated after being hospitalized for the injury, though prioritizing sleep may not be feasible in victims with potentially life-threatening injuries, increasing sleep in other trauma-exposed population could practically be done. Like military personnel coming back from patrol could be encouraged to sleep and potentially be given sleep-promoting drugs to help them stave off any trauma experienced during the patrol. So when you see whether your children or someone who has gone through some sort of a trauma, if there's an opportunity for them to relax and be able to sleep, even if you could use maybe the music that is on YouTube, for example, for sleep, it would support them and help them. Researchers caution that although their experiments suggest that manipulating sleep immediately after trauma may be beneficial, such an intervention may or may not be effective for trauma experiences that occurred in the more distant past. Based on their findings, they also suggest that the use of antidepressants known as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, in people with PTSD may need to be re-examined, as SSRIs are known to suppress REM sleep. Maybe doing our trauma victims a disservice by prescribing a class of drugs that actually eliminates a potential therapeutic avenue for them by removing the REM sleep, when the findings suggest that it should actually be increasing REM sleep. And pretty much that was what the study says, that when they tried to increase their REM sleep, that's when they saw the past next couple of, the couple of next week after that, people were functioning much, much, much better. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Roni Maislish. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and I am with Roni Maislish. He is working in the field of emotional aspect of obesity since 2005. He has extensive experience working with the overweight patients in multiple hospital settings and eating disorder treatment facilities, and he leads groups for people and professionals, therapists, regarding emotional eating. Welcome to the show, Roni.
Thank you very much, Foojan. Great to be with you.
Yes, you, as we were talking, I know that a lot of people, when we talk about obesity and when we talk about emotional, and we're talking about eating disorders, people either think about the obesity being, in a sense, obviously a disease and an illness that is, prevalent in many places in the world. But also, it was funny because a child that I was looking at and say, they look very good, based on the percentage that the health, let's say, scale she was being considered obese. And then the other conversation that we have is when we look at eating disorders, it's usually like whether it's anorexia or bulimia, or it's a condition that they do a particular thing. But you're saying you really work with people who have emotional eating problems, which a lot of people in the world use food for comfort or changing their moods or party and festivities. So food has a lot of meaning for all of us. And we don't just use it as fuel. We use it in all different perspectives, which at times may create some problems. So share with us your experience with emotional eating and how food actually creates problem for us.
Maybe I can speak about, the first or second season of Friends. Do you remember, like maybe 20 years ago, the session, the time that Rachel came back after, I think, the Italian guy left her. I think it was before she met Ross, or she hung out with Ross, and she was feeling very sad and loneliness, and she just came to Monica, and Monica just went to the refrigerator and gave her, a bucket full of ice cream. So that is emotional eating. So if I want to analyze Rachel about what was happening, so I can say maybe she felt alone, she felt, someone threw her, and she felt very sad. So that is the event. This Italian guy, I think, said no thank you. So the emotion is all of those one, feeling sad, feeling emptiness, feeling alone, and the behavior is the emotional eating. So I can do analyze for that, and maybe connect that to when Rachel was maybe 10 years old and her parents split. Can you remember that? If you remember those episodes. So maybe after maybe 20 years, she's reacting the same way she felt as a child. She feels the same way when her father left the family. So we're talking about emotional eating, that the food and the eating are all connected to our memories. Very, very, very rare and very, from very childish, history, you can say. So this is the beginning of the explanation, what is emotional eating. But I think there is a split between the emotional side and the physical. And if there is a person who, like anorectic or bulimic person, so we can say that this person have like a mental disease. But if a person, we can see in the streets so many, even in Los Angeles, but in Los Angeles, there are a lot of people in, good shape. But, there are 100 million Americans who suffer from obesity or overweight. This is the statistic that didn't change for the last 50 years. So the question is, what are we doing with that? So most of the time, people looked at obesity as a disease of the body. So, so the split between mind and body, I think this is the big issue. And what it's not my agenda, but maybe it's like my mission, that both professional, but also the crowd itself, the people will understand that sometimes overweight and obesity have emotional aspect, like emotional reason for being overweight, and you need the emotional therapeutic process to maybe heal from overweight or obesity. So this is like first thought about that.
Yes, I mean, and I think that when we're talking also about other types of the eating disorders, then definitely emotions and thought process get into it. There's also a lot of habitual, let's say, behavioral systems that are part of our learning. So for the obesity, when we're looking at not just emotional eating, there's also a genetic factor, and there's also
Right.
you live, when you live in an environment where your family system utilizes food or the type of food and all of that in a particular way, you've been used to that. Yeah, you're familiar with it because that's how you were used to doing that. Now that's different than very small group of people, let's say, that their body, handles food and nutrition in a particular way. But beyond that, I think that what happens is that even when we know, we gain the knowledge of how to be with our body and what type of nutrition to eat and what works, there is a part of us that does not want to. So it's not like we don't have knowledge, but there's a part of us that just doesn't want to.
You mean don't want to be changed or do something different, you mean?
Yeah.
Like we don't want to leave our pattern or our way of handling stuff.
So we say we want to, but we don't want to. And I'll share with that.
Yeah.
Like on a personal level, it's not that I don't have the knowledge. I have very good knowledge about what to eat, how to eat, and I've done enough diet to know exactly what to do in order to do that and maintain. And so there's a part of, let's say, my adult mind that knows how to do this. But there's also the emotional part, and there's also the psychological difference that says, I should have a reward after working 13 hours. And I should have the reward that I like, the food that I like. Like, it's not going to be broccoli. I'm sorry. It's going to be something definitely with sugar and fat and salt in it. And no, you can't make me eat those things, like fibery things, just because you're telling me like it's time to eat. So there's another part of the like the pleasure aspect that shows up with food, right? Like since the minute we're born, obviously it's the milk, and then, it's the first birthday, and then it's all the cake, and everybody gets together. And, when people are supposed to socialize and be together, it's food involved, and we go to restaurants, and so you can see, like, there's a lot of pleasure also. So there's pleasure associated with food, a reward associated with food, that it's always there. And therefore, when we don't feel good, we're tired, or we're upset or sad and all of that, then we run to what we've associated, and the types of food we've associated with pleasure. And therefore, that's how, we also run after those type of food.
Yeah, so you ask or you share, a few different, issues. So maybe we will start with the pattern that, our habits, that whenever I'm drinking coffee, I will take the cookie or the cake even. So it's like a connection between stuff. So for me as a psychotherapist, what is most interesting for me is how this, connection was started. Is it started when I saw my father at the age of 5, whenever he's, watching television, eating, hummus or pizza or whatever. And then, I want to be like my father. So, and I want to be close to my father. All right. And I can understand that this connection can bring me some enjoyment about, connection with other people, feeling love, feeling even secure, I'm with people. So I'm going with people to understand the root of this, connection, and to see if they willing really, as we spoke before, to really make a change in their life. Maybe sometimes maybe they will need to find new friends, because all of the friends, it's that or that, and they cannot, help them to make change in their life. So this is, one thing. But, in the last 10 years as a psychotherapist, I'm practicing self-psychology psychotherapy. And self-psychology psychotherapy, we are less concerned about understanding, about awareness, about mindful, because I believe that I could be very aware and very understand about those connections, and it will not help me, tonight with the cake or whatever. So really what is, the issue, I don't want to see the problem, because I see our field not as a problem to solve, but as a body theater. So how we present some of our inner needs through our relationship with food and eating. So it's a body-mind theater, you can say. So I want to help people to go back to their, Winnicott said, our true self, our nature. Go back to our nature. Go back to our, nuclear self. And when we are operating from this self, we will less, our self will be more strong, with more strength. So we will have less tendency to lose the balance, to lose our emotional balance. So we will need less to bring maybe food to help us to get the balance back. So I'm working with those patients that wants to go very deep in, deep in their, you can say healing process, to the very core of their self. And it's like I'm, trying to, it's like, being a father or a mother to my patient. A little bit how, again, quotes call it self-object, and Winnicott call it, good enough mother. So I want to be a good enough mother to my patient.
Yes. I remember when I used to smoke cigarettes for 30 years, I think. And I remember when I was going for treatments for myself, and I worked with, I was also learning hypnosis. So obviously I, have everybody work on me too, the same way I utilize right now. Work on me, work on me. And I went back to, obviously, like when I started cigarette is when I moved to US, and it was in, with all of the teenagers that we wanted to act like cool grown-ups. So obviously we started smoking cigarettes at that time. But out of all the things that were in front of me, which were drugs and alcohol and so many things, but why cigarettes suddenly, right? I mean, I could have gone to anything. It would have been cool to do any of those things. And then when I wanted to quit smoking and I did a couple of the hypnosis, it was interesting because this memory came up, Roni, where I was very young, like maybe 2 years old. And I remember this episode that we were on a trip. And my father, I guess I had an ear infection and we were on a trip. So they couldn't really immediately take me to the doctor. So until they could take me to the doctor, my father used to smoke and then put the smoke into my ear. They thought this was going to calm down the pain for some reason. Who knew? I have no idea what they were thinking at that moment. But this vivid memory of this love and being taken care of, being in my father's arm, and then my memory of my father is obviously they got divorced when I was about 5, and he was really not in my life at all after that. So this was the only kind of like a bonding memory that I had with my father. So this concept of the connection that I got with cigarette, which is poison, but to me, it was a symbol of love, and it was a symbol of connection. So it's so for everyone who's listening or watching us, I want them to really capture what you were talking about, that when we go back and something that might be toxic, something that might be good or not, when it's associated to a particular type of an experience, that it holds that. And partly the insight, but partly working through those memories and creating and all of that works with us in how to shift the way that we have associated a particular object with an emotion, with a behavior.
That's amazing what you just said, the memory and, in general, there is a psychoanalytic from New York named Michael Eigen. I don't know if you heard about him, but he wrote a lot of books, and one of his, famous chapter is about emotional starvation, about his work with, of overweight patient. And there's another book, exactly what you said, about your father smoking, poison, and you use the word, toxic. So there's another book named Toxic Nourishment. So there's nothing 100% pure or healthy. It's all, it's all combined, healthy and, poison. So we need to find, our, it's not in the middle, actually. It's to find our very subjective, personal way to heal ourselves. And for sure, there will be time, that we will have some toxic in some of our relationship. But if it will take us to our next level, so maybe it will be worth it, So I'm not thinking about, I can talk about your cigarette, emotional smoking. We can talk about emotional eating, emotional smoking, emotional drinking, emotional sex, emotional gambling. It doesn't matter because it's part of our life. And it's not bad. It can tell us something. It can tell our friend something about ourselves, So I'm not judging that. I'm trying to work with that, and it's like, I'm not like legitimize that, but it's like part of our life,
Well, it's more of understanding where it's showing up, and then you get choices in how to heal and shift. But as long as it's a subconscious concept, we bring a lot of, let's say, excuses for ourselves, even though I want to change, such as what I was saying is like, I want to change. I keep saying I want to change about the way that I am with food. Yeah, I mean, it's not that I'm unhealthy. Everything's working out well, but it's still the concept of, if I promised myself as I'm growing in age that I need to get, not have these type of things, because as I'm aging is not going to work. I see the other parts of me which keeps coming and grabbing at it.
So Tell me.
Also talk about mindfulness eating. So one is the concept of understanding, getting the insight, finding what it is that you've associated, any of your habits with, how come it's there. And then, going to your original self, going to that, and then, opening yourself up and making decisions from there. But there's also this concept of mindfulness eating. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I will talk about that, and then I want to speak about what you just said, and maybe it's, the topic is the role of the fat, the psychology role of the fat, and maybe, our fear, to lose weight. Why our maybe afraid, to be more thin? What will happen if we will, lose 20 pounds? That is very important question. And what is happening after we are losing weight? Why we are not staying there? So if I will have time, I will speak also about that. So about the mindfulness, eating mindfulness, I mean, I'm doing workshop with people, and in my approach to work about, this topic, it's to see the connection, the similarity, and the opposite pattern between our relationship with food and eating to other relationships. So I taking people to a buffet, and we are sitting there, and I'm asking all sorts of questions, my patients. So how they choose food? Are they choosing fast or slow? Either, waiting, for the good stuff till the end, or are they starting with the ice cream? And then I'm asking about shopping, or how they spend money, how they choose their loved ones, how they choose their, occupation, their profession, and see the connection between how we behave with our relationship with food and eating to other relationship with food. So if I'm choosing very fast food, and I'm choosing my clothes in the store also very fast, so I want to see if I can, in the next month maybe, to choose in life more slow, and I want to see if that might be effect on my relationship with food and eating, that I will choose maybe also a little bit slower my food during the meal time. So this is part of my work with mindfulness meal. About what you said, maybe you don't want, or something about losing weight. What will happen? I'm always, thinking about fear. What is the unconscious fear to become thinner? For like in the last 15 years, I think I spoke with, thousands of women. 70% of them, I think, will always go back to the attractive, thing. They will be afraid to be more attractive. Even if they're, very happy married and everything, but just the energy that instead of, a man, approaching them every 2 months, maybe it could happen twice a week, a day, and those women don't want this energy around them. And when I'm talking about being, attractive, I can also talk both for men and women, not just about sexual attractive. I'm talking about being in the center. You know, being in the center, I will have a lot of duty. A lot of people will want from me, stuff. So it's not that easy to lose weight from emotional perspective. So if I can help through the therapeutic relationship, those patients to become more strong. So when they are, slowly, gradually become thinner, they will have more opportunity to handle the change, really to become a different person.
Right, to learn different types of protective or setting boundaries versus do it with the fat around their belly.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. 1 minute, if we haven't covered something and you really want our audience to know.
No, it was very, it's run very fast, and I enjoy it. Thank you very much, Foojan.
Me too. Roni, how could people find you?
I think maybe I think I sent you some information, but I can, give my email here, or you can write it down later.
Do you have a website that they can find you? How can they find
Yeah,
you?
they can just write my name, Roni Maislish. In English, it's Roni Maislish, Maislish, and they can find my LinkedIn and my website, and yeah, all of my connection.
Beautiful. It was great talking to you. Thank you for coming to us all the way from Israel. And I know there's a time difference there, and it was great to have you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Foojan.
And for everyone, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Inner Voice Show. I have Lyn Lesch with me. He founded and directed his own democratically run school for children ages 6 to 14 for 12 years, one that received widespread attention in the Chicago area as a unique approach to education. He has written 4 books on education reform, all of them emphasizing the importance of what occurs inside a young person while they learn. He has a lifelong interest in pursuing a larger consciousness, and his new book that we will be talking about today is Intelligence in the Digital Age, How the Search for Something Larger May Be Imperiled. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Doctor. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful, and I'm sorry that due to a lot of wind here, and something going on with the digital age. I think the digital age knows we're not going to be talking very nicely about it, so it's infiltrating us and not allowing us to have.
That's an interesting idea to think about that. Absolutely.
As the AI becomes more conscious and for its own survival, it's going to,
That's a frightening thought. Some people actually believe in that and wonder how far they can take it. That's a scary thought.
Yes, I'm not taking it there yet. I'm obviously, I hope that everyone who's listening or viewing us knows that I'm joking about this, but let's talk about what got you interested actually in writing this book, because you look at it from a different perspective. Actually, you look at it from a psychological perspective, from educational perspective, and you bring a lot of different authors and conversations that, a lot of the books that you've read and brought different aspects, whether it was from art, whether it's from history, whether it's psychology, and you brought all of them together to let us know about something. So some parts of your book, as I read it, it's giving us the expansion and how much the digital age has brought us and moved us forward. And then there's also this cautionary concept of keep looking at, what are we doing? How are we changing? How are we losing, our attention, our memories, and all of that? So what got you to write this book?
Well, a couple of things got me to write this book, I would say. One of them is that, I ran a private school for years, which the main concern of the school was what goes on inside a child, what goes on inside somebody while they learn. So the interior life of somebody was always just hugely important to me. And then also, I've been interested in years for developing a larger consciousness. I used to come up to where I live now. I just moved here to Ojai, just north of Los Angeles, to hear a philosopher, thinker named Krishnamurti, who used to speak about developing a larger consciousness, going inside oneself to carefully examine one's thoughts, one's memories, one's inner life, and to just see if those psychological aspects of one's inner world could take one to a larger awareness, the other side of thought and memory. So I guess those kind of two things went together. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I started the school, was to see if I could develop an environment which could facilitate young people being able to examine their own experience a little more carefully when they move toward adulthood. And then a lot of this just coincided with things that I've seen happening in the digital age, which bothered me. You know, one of them is just this jumpy, fragmented awareness that goes on in people when they go online and they're going from email to text message, jumping from link to link all the time. That's got to start becoming our own awareness, because we're being conditioned to do that on the internet so much. And when one's awareness becomes less complete, more jumpy, it's harder to think rationally. It's harder to examine the world. And you know, something else that bothers me is just this whole idea we're now outsourcing our memories to Google and other search engines. We're not going back in our thoughts and trying to pull knowledge and information out of our own networks of thought, try to remember things by going back in our thoughts. We go, as soon as we can't remember something, we go right to Google, and we're not using those same networks of thought to pull our memories and our knowledge out that we used to. So those things, those networks and those memories have to be drying up and calcifying. And, you know, that's just kind of a scary thought, too. And then, of course, you know, our short-term memories, we're flooded with so much information these days that comes at us so quickly on the web. And our short-term memories have only a limited storage capacity. And therefore, they can't pass on all of that knowledge and that information they need to our long-term memories. And our long-term memories are what we use to make sense of the world, to decide what's relevant, what's not relevant. It's what we use to focus. So we're also losing that capacity to focus by you know, figuring out what's relevant, what's not, you know, what's irrelevant. And then the last thing would be, I'm kind of concerned that people are, by staring into a plastic screen all day and apprehending just images on that plastic screen, they're not having the same experience in the real world that they used to. It's just, you know, and an image on a plastic screen is never going to leave the same emotive depth in somebody that a real world experience. So I'm afraid people may be accepting a more diluted experience of their lives because they're so used to getting that when they go on the web, rather than just going for a walk in the woods or whatever. So all of those things I'm concerned with, as far as not only, you know, people maintaining their intelligence, but if someone wants to explore the possibility of a larger consciousness, they need all those things intact so they can examine them. They need to know where their thoughts are going. They need to know the basis of their memories. They need to be able to focus attentively on what's relevant and what's not, and they need a deep emotive life. And that's what I'm concerned with too, that this internet age may be making it harder for those people, even though it may not be the majority of people in the world, for those people to examine a larger consciousness.
Tell me what you mean by larger consciousness. When
Yes.
you talk, because obviously it also has given us many more access to different types of, let's say, meditation apps, anxiety apps, letting us, you know, search in so many ways that if we didn't have this digital age, we could only be kind of limited to what we had around us physically in a brick and mortar, you know, around what we had. People had to travel, you know, all the way to India or other places, or, you know, retreats in order to only get those experiences, where today, through the plastic, you know, monitoring that we have, or our little phones that takes us everywhere with app, we actually do have the opportunity of sitting down in our own home and getting access to all this material. So yes, the type of information that comes in, it's a lot, but I think that probably our brain is also trying to figure out more of a way of selecting all the input that it's coming. The same way that if we're walking in the woods, there's a lot of stimulus that are around, but we learn how to kind of like zoom in and zoom to the walking that we're doing, and, you know, maybe get an expanded view of the whole forest and then come back again. So we do this type of we've always done a selective input. And yes, at this point where we're going from, you know, surfing from one thing to another, and at every moment there's something coming up to get our attention, it seems like we're also hyper focusing to really select what part of this mega information that shows up, and we take it. So I hear your concern, but I'm also adding this piece as the benefits which comes in with that kind of concern. Can you share a bit about
Sure.
those?
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that the internet is just a wonderful tool for all kinds of things. As long as somebody doesn't become addicted to it, and it creates those sort of things I talked about. What I mean when I talk about a larger consciousness is basically a quiet mind. To me, a quiet mind is just the key to maybe something larger entering the mind spaces. And I think a lot of the way that happens, a great way for that to happen is somebody begins to realize the limitations of thought and memory. And then when they start to see, our thoughts aren't going to ultimately bring us any real peace of mind or any security to a certain extent, our minds begin to quiet down. And then when our minds get quieter, something larger. Now you can't define that because once you put it into words, then it isn't the same thing anymore. But once our minds begin to quiet down, then something larger, a larger awareness can enter our spaces. But in order for that to happen, we have to be able to see what the limitations of thought are for our own self. We can't read about it in a book. We have to see that for ourselves, how far thoughts go. And we have to see what the elusive nature of memory can be. I know people who studied memory have figured out that every time you remember something, you change it. So memory is an elusive, not necessarily solid reality either. And I think as one begins to see the limitations of thought, the limitations of memory, one's mind begins to quiet down naturally without you having to do anything to make that happen. And then when that happens, maybe there's the possibility of something of a larger awareness. But to me, the quiet mind is such a key to all this. And I don't think techniques are going to get you there as well as just understanding what the limitations of thought or memory are.
So part of what I'm understanding also from your book is to bring to the people's attention of how much on a day-to-day basis something has come into their life which is taking over, and if they consciously don't put it aside and allow the mind to go into a more space of in-tuneness with itself and a silence, then they get addicted. We all are, in a sense, and
yeah.
The digital world will consume us, will take us. So if we don't create a structure for that space of us going into a solitude and quieting our mind, that you're going to have all of these ramifications without necessarily being aware of it. Is that what I'm getting?
Absolutely. That's a great point. And I actually have some suggestions relative to that, if that's okay. I think one thing people can do is when somebody goes to the web and they're following some link and they're getting information from that, don't just jump to the next link. Walk away from the computer or the phone. Let yourself totally take in what you've just absorbed on the web so it becomes part of your memory. People are in the habit now, this is great, next link, next link, next link. And they don't ever fully take in a lot of what they're absorbing on the web. So I would really encourage people, once you downloaded something that you really think is important, just walk away from the computer and let yourself think about what that is. Let it become part of your memory. And also, I think it's important if people can't remember something, don't necessarily go to Google to get it. See if you can retrace your thoughts to fish it out of your working memory to see where it's going to go. And even though that can be hard at times, we're so conditioned to go to Google that, but I think that's important because then you are still traversing those networks of thought that are in your brain that we don't want to calcify and dry up. And I think also it's something that's really important is just take time each day to follow your stream of thoughts, however you want to do that, in meditation or whatever, without trying to control them, let yourself see where your thoughts might go, because then you're in touch with that. The internet isn't having such a profound effect on creating the sort of jumpy awareness in one if one is able to just simply sit quietly and follow one's thoughts. And then the last thing is, I'm a big fan of bound books. Yeah, it's great that people have ebooks and reading ebooks, and I do it occasionally, but I think there's a real value to having a bound book in one's hands, in one's lap, because it's an embodied experience. One's physically attached to what you're reading, and that information you absorb becomes much more solid and real than if you're just getting it apprehending on e-readers. So there's a lot of research to be done on this yet. People are doing research on whether e-readers are having any kind of deleterious effect relative to bound books. But I still love reading a bound book because it's right in my hand and there's that physical embodied connection to it.
I think the same way that we used to have the opportunity, because that was the only opportunity, which was we walked a lot. We went to different places by walking, and we had to walk. There were no other concepts that it would hold us from walking. And then cars came in, and a lot of other ways of city planning, and the way we went from, our home into our car, into the garage, we went to work or wherever, we went right to the parking, right to the place. And then now, shopping online. And then on the other side, our bodies needed it. So we found other ways of walking, which is treadmill and exercises and gym. And people are creating gyms at their house because they're no longer on a natural level or doing it outside. So they'll create a pseudo level within a system, which they will go 1 hour and structure it in order to do that. I'm sensing within the same construct that because the digital world brings us into this way of, flowing us into flood of information and many times misinformation that we get, then on the other side, it's almost like we've got to create these structures of letting go, like being accepting that I'm flooded, then remove myself from the flood, kind of let it all sink in, see what I'm choosing to pick up, to hold from the short-term memory into the long-term memory, and then sit with whatever it is and create those times. And then I also heard from you, since we're missing the tactile information and experiences, because all we have tactile with is pretty much this. Phone with our 2 thumbs. That we're missing a lot. Our body, our system, the way we pick in information, the way we experience is so different now. Then we have to find other ways of recreating that again. Yes, bringing some of those books and holding them, taking the book and going to a park and actually sitting in the nature and reading. So you keep creating the tactile kind of an experience for yourself again. And then also seeing other people, not just on Facebook and like WhatsApp and different types of video, as we were attempting to do, but also create systems where you could be with people who you love, who touch, hold them, touch them, be in their vicinity to experience that. So I'm also sensing that although some aspects of this is being taken away from us, but people really need to consciously create those structures to keep balancing their life.
Absolutely. In fact, while I was researching this book, I contacted a well-known neuroscientist, and I was sent him an email like, what is the effect of these digital devices on memory and thought and all these? And he said, I thought it was a really fascinating thing relative to what you just said, is that it's not the devices, it's how those devices are being used. In other words, somebody's not going to get ADD or lose their memory because of the cell phone. It's how the cell phone is being used. So we still have control over how we use, and they are amazing devices, no question about it, but we still have control over how they're used. And just because we have cell phones and feces and all that in the world doesn't mean that all these necessarily deleterious things I just talked about are going to happen to people mentally. We still have control how we're going to use the internet. I think that's a really important idea. And one thing I noticed at my school, the school was all for kids 6 to 14, and the internet age was coming in and all that. And, of course, the worry was kids are going to want to sit at their computers all day, this magic toy and all that. And I found to a large extent, given a choice, because the environment was so open and they can move about it so freely, they were generally more interested in what other kids were doing than they were at the computer. I mean, real life at their age, they hadn't been habituated too much yet, still had a much stronger attraction until many of them than sitting at the computer all day. So there's hope as far as that. But no, you're absolutely right. The internet is just this incredible device we have, and we still have control over what we do with our lives. Absolutely. You know, we can make time to go for a walk in the woods and sit quietly and follow our thoughts. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, we're going to become habituated entirely.
Yes, we were just talking, we're writing a book, Intentional Parenting, with the two other experts in child growth. And it was interesting because one of the people who are my co-author also has had a daycare that she works with children from infancy to 6 years of age. And we were writing actually the digital concept with younger age and, you know, what should be. And of course, research only says, you know, maybe 15 minutes a day. It should be the top where you really use it with, you know, children about two years of age. And we were discussing it, and it was interesting because she said exactly what you were saying in her own experience, is that parents, because they get lazy or they don't have time or they have had enough of, you know, interaction with their children, is that they turn it on and give it to them, or they go into a restaurant and they give it to them just to like shut them up. But if it's for them, even if you have it on and they have the opportunity to have other human beings interact with them, children will always use this opportunity to interact. Yeah. And, you know, whether you're a younger person or an older person, the opportunity to have quality relationships with people will always win in you know, in the conversation, having you being only with a prop or some toy inside of your hand, even though it keeps taking your attention constantly. Lynn, in 1 minute, tell me what you want people to know if we've missed it or we haven't talked about it yet.
Okay, I just would like people to be aware that the internet is affecting these things profoundly. You know, it can, if they use it too much, they affect the stream of their thoughts, their working memories, the depth of their emotive lives, their short-term memories. All those things are being affected by people who are just obsessing with using the PCs and phones more than they should. Those things can happen, and they're profound. Those are profound things, you know, not having full control of the stream of your thoughts or your working memories, not having the same depth of an emotive life and you know, not being able to sort out what's relevant and irrelevant with your life because your long-term memory can't do that anymore. Those are profound things, and people need to, I would just say, to pay attention to that. And then also lastly, I would just say that for those people, I know it's not most people in the world, but for those people who are search seekers of a larger consciousness, they need to make sure they try to be aware of what the internet might be doing to themselves as far as that search. Because, you know, to me, like I said, the search for a quiet mind is so important. And in order to do that, one has to have access to their stream of thoughts and their working memory, or it's hard to see what those things are.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Lyn Lesch, Intelligence in the Digital Age, How the Search for Something Larger May Be in Peril. Where can they find you, Lynn?
They can find me at lynlesch.com. That's my website. I'm on Twitter at Lyn Lesch. You know, the book is published by Rowman and Littlefield. They can find it on Amazon or any of the other larger booksellers.
Beautiful. The same publisher that my publisher. So that's beautiful.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it was wonderful to have you. I'm sorry that due to all of the internet concepts.
Well, that's my fault. Yeah, I'm sorry.
We couldn't have your visual, but at least we had your audio, and it was beautiful to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Sure. For everyone, thank you for being with us, for listening with your heart, and create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, create an amazing life. Take care. Bye-bye.